Hey everybody, hi, happy holidays. Thanks for joining me today. We've had a lot of great questions that have been sent in, but this is our time to just chat about anything. So if you want to know more about that turkey I told you about that I cooked for Thanksgiving, or what the heck I'm going to cook for Christmas, which I don't actually know yet, but I have an idea, then put it in the chat. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about it. And I've got some great things to share with you as well. So thank you so much for spending a little time with me. It's always nice to see everybody. I see Cindy in Windy, Kansas, and Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer. Jennifer is up in Indiana, and Vicki from Ohio. Hey, Vicki. And Melissa in Arkansas. Nice to see you, Melissa. And of course, we're over on YouTube as well. And I see Amy and Karen over there. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and pop in what city you're watching from. It's always nice to see where everybody is. And I just appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me today. And I hope that you are all ready for Christmas. We have, goodness, I don't even know how many Christmas quilts that we had brought in by our customers that we had to plow through. But today is the day where we finish that last Christmas quilt for our customers. So, big win here. We're, ahead of the game for sure. And then we've got some other quilts that we didn't promise until January that will get done early, so our customers will be a little happy. But if you quilt for others, you're in the middle of the crunch, and I feel you. I really do. I tell you, the very first year that I started quilting for others, it didn't occur to me to set a deadline. I was just happy that people wanted me to quilt their quilts. And I didn't get a Christmas that year because I had way too many quilts that had to be done, and I was so stressed out, and I just said never, ever, ever again. And so for a long time, my deadline was Thanksgiving. And then I got so busy that I had to push it back to Halloween. And we've added more machines, more computerized machines as well. So now the deadline is back to Thanksgiving. So we had a mountain of quilts to finish for our customers, but today we got through them all. So is anybody else out there finished with all their Christmas quilts, whether you're quilting for others or you are quilting your own stuff? I actually don't have any quilts that I'm giving away as gifts this year. Normally there's some kind of quilty item. But this year I'm not doing anything like that. Although I do have a quilt for my daughter that I owe her that just needs a hanging sleeve on it. She wants to use it to hang behind her for her Zoom calls like this, but it's blue and white because she's going to a school that's their colors. So 2 to go, Cindy says, for Christmas deadline. Won't it feel good, Cindy, to get that out of your hair and relax a little bit? That's awesome. Good for you. I'm going to check over on YouTube. I've got both up so that I can say hello to folks. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of people over on YouTube too. Hey, you guys. Julie and Christy in West Virginia. Awesome. And Faye. Hey, Deb. Deb's in South Dakota. At some point, Deb, I'm going to get to the Dakotas. I hear it's absolutely gorgeous. I just haven't been. I want to go to Montana too, and I just haven't had the excuse to do so. And Deborah and Karen in Somerset. And there's a number of Deborahs. There's a Deb and a Deborah. Deborah's in Oklahoma. And Shirley in New Mexico. Diana in Dallas. Karen in Oklahoma. Powderly, Kentucky. Patricia. I have no idea where Powderly, Kentucky is. It sounds very lovely and like everything should be Barbie pink in Powderly, Kentucky. I'll have to look up where you are. And Christy, yeah, I will get to your questions. Awesome. Lynette, last one goes on today. Good for you, Lynette. And Amy in Greenville. Michelle, one more. Don't you feel like that, like you should have like a candy cane at the end to celebrate or something? And Diana, you're doing a double wedding ring for your daughter-in-law. That's super sweet. Judy in Buffalo, and Marie in Canada. Awesome. And Patricia is in Venice, Florida. Yeah, so Patricia, you're experiencing a very different weather than Marie is, aren't you? Because she's way up in Canada. And then Catherine in Maine. So good to see everybody. I do want to thank you guys for all of the love and support that you all sent out to us. We're here in Louisville, Kentucky. And of course, Kentucky got hit by a crazy tornado that just absolutely devastated so many areas. It hit well south and to the west of us here in Louisville. But we're feeling, all of our concerns are going out to our fellow Kentuckians. My husband, he is from Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Bowling Green is in that western tip. I always think Kentucky looks like a foot. So he's like in the big toe of the foot of Kentucky. And he said that he knew it was going to be bad. And so he had prepared himself. He had to go down there for work and take photos and do some drone video footage and stuff for his work. And he said he wasn't prepared for the devastation he saw to his hometown. And that was, Bowling Green got hit, but some of the other towns nearby just got wiped out. So really frightening, terribly frightening. And I remember as a little girl, I was terrified. I lived in Oklahoma. I was terrified of tornadoes. So even now, it is super scary for me. And we always go to the basement anytime they get anywhere close to us. But my heart goes out to all those folks who are just trying to pick up the pieces. So my husband, he went down there to kind of work with the linemen and get photos of them getting electricity back up and running. And he just said, at this point in some of those towns, there's not homes to run electricity to, and they have to get the debris out of the way before they can really even start building that infrastructure back. So just heartbreaking. But thank you guys so much for your concern. All of our team members are safe. All of our team members are good. We're all just feeling it for our fellow Kentuckians, as well as neighboring states that also got hit as well. Tennessee, Arkansas, and Missouri got hit as well, or Illinois got hit as well. So thank you guys so much for your concern. Okay, so we do have some questions, and make sure that if you have them, pop them in there. And I just want to be sure that I don't miss any. So let's see. There was one here. Oh, there it is. Christy. Christy said, how do you move a pantograph to quilt to the next row? So Christy, the pantographs, the printed pantographs, they actually have a ghost row, a grayed out row printed on them, and you use that ghost row to realign for the next row. So essentially, the first row that you stitch is the dark black row that's on the paper pantograph. So you get that stitched out, and then you hover your needle over the ghost row that's printed, a light gray row on a nice pointy point of that light gray row, and you advance the quilt so that what you just stitched becomes the ghost. You move what you just stitched into that ghost row position. So if you are using a pantograph that does not have a ghost row on it, just throw it away. Like it's so hard to use. And a lot of the super old ones won't have a ghost row. So make sure that whatever pantograph you choose, I would make sure it undulates, it interlocks, because that helps you, it builds forgiveness into the pattern so that if you don't have it on perfectly square to the quilt, it doesn't look cockeyed on the quilt. And then with that ghost row, that's how you use it to advance to the next row. What you have stitched becomes your ghost. And then you stitch the new row, and then that row, you advance it to move it into that ghost row position. And there's a lot of great videos out there to show it. I know if you go to apqs.com and you go to the APQS YouTube channel, one of my quilting heroes, Dawn Kavanaugh, she has an extensive video. It's like a 45-minute video all about how to advance for paper pantographs, and it goes into great detail. And if you haven't checked out the APQS YouTube channel, you'll find me over there doing a lot of free motion tutorials and border designs and all over edge to edge and that sort of thing. And then Dawn has even done, she recently did, there's a video on there about faux piping, and she did one about facings, and Dawn's just amazing. If you ever get to take a class from Dawn Kavanaugh, totally do it. She's an amazing instructor. She's one of my heroes, so. Excuse me. So Diana said, oh, that's about your daughter-in-law. Diana, you'll have to put a picture of that up in the Quilted Joy Clubhouse so we can celebrate with you when you get done. Terry, on pantographs, how do I know if the quilted row and the next row are close enough? Terry, you don't have to do math. You don't have to do eyeball. You need that ghost row. The ghost row dictates your spacing. You don't have to worry about anything else. Time was, Terry, that we had to like measure the quilt and divide the quilt by the size of the row and then decide how much space between the row we needed to build in so that everything mathematically worked. Blah. Now you just follow the ghost. You use what you've sewn, moved into the ghost row, and the ghost row does all the hard work. Awesome. All right, and then I'm going to check. I was over on Facebook, but I'm going to come.
Melissa had a question about
Yep.
pantographs as well. When
Yep.
to choose quilt by row versus quilted pantograph?
So Melissa had a question about when do you choose quilt by row versus quilt by pantograph. So Melissa, it sounds like you're using either the Quilt Path system or Quilt Motion or Quilter's Magician. Those are all made by the Grace Company. And so the only time that I would do quilt I would use quilt by row for just about everything. The other option you would use if you wanted to set up like a background filler. So if you think about a block and you want just an all over edge to edge, well, essentially you can set that up as a pantograph row, just small, just little, but multiple rows. And so you can choose to stitch that out as one giant unit. But if what you're asking it to stitch is bigger than the space between your bars on your long arm machine, you'll run into trouble. So if what you want to complete is bigger than your bars, you need to stitch it as rows. If what you want to complete will fit between your bars, you can stitch it as a pattern. And then it won't bug you at the end of each row. You can, do each one. But it sounds like you're talking about Quilt Path. The APQS Quilt Path that's made by Grace, and then it goes by a couple of other names too. I'm not sure exactly what you are working on, what you have. Was there another question in there about pantographs that I didn't see, Brad?
I think that was all the pantographs.
Okay. And Vicki said, I would like to use a snowy background on a small snowflake quilt. I'm thinking about using the elongated swirl, and after I stitch solid colors, medium gray background, it's so small, I don't want to overpower the lone snowflake. Yeah, so Vicki, I would go skinny. A skinny thread will be your friend there. Anytime I just want the quilting to melt away and let the embroidery or the applique or the piecing be the star, just go skinny thread, something that blends. That Battleship Gray is such a great color. We have another one that is super popular right now. It's Seagull, I think it is. That is a really nice, it's a glide thread that just kind of blends away. But I would even look at Glide 60. I don't know if you've played with Glide 60 yet, Vicki, but there's some light gray Glide 60, so it's a 60 weight thread. It's a popular thread to run in if you're going to wind your own bobbins because it's a skinny thread, so you can put more yardage on your bobbin. But you can run it in your top position as well, and because it's so skinny, it just melts away. It's also nice if you're doing anything with overstitching, so anything that has backtracking, because it's so skinny, it'll have some forgiveness there. So try some Glide 60. I think you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised, Vicki. And we did have some other questions that came in. June, she says, when layering batting, which do you put down against the backing? And which do you put up next to the top, and what types do you use? So June, it sounds like you're using two different battings, and typically when I do two different battings, in fact, I have one here. So this little whole cloth that I made, this one has wool against the quilt top, and it has a cotton against the quilt back. So it's two layers of batting. And lots of fun with variegated threads, and it's all freehand. This whole thing is freehand. I did use rulers for the piano keys on the outside border, and I did it for those side triangles, and then used, can you see the circles in the corner, Kelsey? Yeah. And then used a circle ruler to give me the circles, but I didn't use a computer for this. This is all free motion. And so because I've got two battings, I wonder if you can see it. It's very sculpted. It's also got a lot of lint on it, but it's very sculpted. So the kink of the wool I want to keep that on the top because that will push out into the quilting lines to fill up the quilting lines to kind of come at you and smack you in the face. It just gives nice definition. And then the back side, the batting I used on the back, that cotton I used on the back, I'll either use cotton or 80/20 in the back. That's really just to give it stability. And so with wool, where you overstitch, it'll compress the fibers down, the kink of the wool down, and where you leave it unquilted, the kink of the wool will pull out. And so typically when you're talking about double batting, you're talking about a wool bat. And wool is expensive. There's nothing like it though. Like I've tried to substitute a high loft poly instead. It just doesn't, it's just not the same. It's just plain old not the same. I sure wish it was because it'd be a whole lot cheaper, but it's just not the same. So whatever I want to fill out in the quilting lines, June, that's what I would put against the quilt top. And then whatever's on the back side is really just for stability. And to prevent as much of that wool from being pulled to the back side as possible, because of course I'm punching through it with a big old needle. I have used, so one of my other quilting heroes is Judy Madsen. I don't know if you guys have found Judy Madsen, but she is amazingly talented. And she likes to use 2 layers. One of her books said that she used 2 layers of 80/20. And so I thought, well, if Judy's using 2 layers of 80/20, I'm going to use 2 layers of 80/20. And so I put 2 layers of 80/20 down. And because it's not wool, so it doesn't compress quite the same way, I had to raise the height of my hopping foot up to compensate for that thickness. So most manufacturers, most long arms out there, you can raise the height of your hopping foot, you can change it. So check with your dealer or your manufacturer about that if you want to do 2 layers of 80/20. I will say that the 2 layers of 80/20 was a very heavy quilt in comparison to a quilt that has wool and some kind of, whether it's a cotton wool, it's combined with a cotton wool bat or a cotton bat or 80/20 bat. 2 layers of 80/20 kind of felt like a weighted blanket. And what I'm after when I'm doing a double bat is really to show off the custom quilting. So generally that's not going to be a utilitarian quilt. Generally that's something I'm going to hang on a wall. So I prefer the wool with the second bat as opposed to like 2 layers of 80/20. And then, so yeah. And so I think I answered all the questions, June. I'm just going through to make sure I answered all your questions and I think I got it. So, all right. Hey, Vicki says she's smiling. Good. I'm glad you're smiling, Vicki. I hope that was helpful. Do try that Glide 60. Oh, Cheryl Joe. Hey, Cheryl Joe in Mount Juliet. Do I prefer, Michelle says, do I prefer to be unregulated stitch versus regulated stitch, and any tips? So Michelle, I would turn your stitch regulator, I'm presuming you're talking about a long arm machine, because my answer is different if you're talking about a sit down machine. If you're talking about a long arm machine, I would keep it in stitch regulation mode almost always, especially when you're learning. Now I will say that when you get down to little stuff, like little pebbles, micro stipples, little tiny stuff, then I would switch over to unregulated mode. Or if you have an APQS machine, there's a feature on the Millie and Freddie called Quilt Glide. Other manufacturers, it's called Coast or Cruise. It changes the motor. It kind of overlays manual mode on top of stitch regulation mode, and it makes those little tiny directional changes much easier and has a flow to it. But if you aren't doing little tiny stuff, I would go ahead and keep it in stitch regulation mode. It helps the anxiety level lower a little bit, right? Because as I go into an area and I think, gosh, what am I doing? I can take my hands off the machine and my brain can catch up with myself, and then I can grab the handles and go and not have to worry about, turning the machine on and off. If I'm on a sit-down machine, so if you have a domestic machine that has a stitch regulator on your sit-down machine, I would unplug it. In my experience, it actually fights you more than helps you, and it can make learning free motion quilting on a sit-down machine a little more difficult. So one thing I would say is as you're learning, don't worry so much about the size of the stitch, right? I don't know about you, but I didn't get into quilting to compete. I certainly didn't get into it for the math. I just did it to play with pretty things. Yeah, play with pretty fabric, play with pretty thread. And so part of it is you just have to go, okay, so if my stitches aren't exactly perfect all the time, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It just means you're having fun. So release that perfectionist thing where, you know, somebody's going to judge you for it. If somebody judges you for it, they're not your friend. So don't give them that quilt. So it's one of the ways to learn. Now, I have a number of friends who teach long arm quilting, and the one that comes to mind is Claudia File. So we're talking a lot about my quilting heroes. She's another one of my quilting heroes. And Claudia, she will walk into a classroom and she will say, stitch regulators off. And everybody will turn off their stitch regulators because she wants you to learn the flow of the pattern she's teaching you and not get hung up on how the machine moves differently as it regulates your stitch. And to just release that whole everything has to be perfect and know that as you're learning, some stitches are going to be quite small and some are going to be larger, and it's okay because the purpose is to learn. The purpose isn't to create something that's going to be judged. Hopefully I answer that question. So in general, I'll put it in stitch regulation mode. Christy, what batting is good to use for t-shirt quilts? I would just use polyester. Christy, you got to think about all those t-shirt quilts. First of all, you've probably interfaced them with a non-woven fusible interfacing, so they've got polyester in them anyway. And they probably have massive screen printed vinyl whatnot, you know, on the t-shirt itself, and the t-shirt is knit. So yeah, I would go with a polyester because polyester batting, you don't have to quilt quite so closely together. It's quite so dense. So I can kind of zoom around the quilt a little quicker, get it done faster. And any t-shirts that have a face on them, even if it's like a horse or a dog or a cat, but especially a human, I don't want to stitch over a face. Who wants stitches on their face? So that polyester gives me the leeway to avoid areas. And we had a t-shirt quilt that came in recently that they wanted us to do. Have you seen those sequin pillows where if you rub it one way, it like shows, I don't know, a heart, and you rub it the other way and it shows a star? The t-shirt had that sequin stuff on it. Well, I don't want my needle going anywhere near that, right? So the polyester allowed us to just go around it and not through it, because that's some scary stuff right there. It's kind of cool stuff, but I wonder, like on a t-shirt, I don't know, like why is it even, because I'm not going to rub my shirt. Maybe you just run really fast and the wind blows it. Maybe it was a pillow. Yeah, maybe it was. Maybe it was. All right, I want to show you guys this thing. This just came out. Is it good? Okay, so this is the January-February edition of Love of Quilting magazine. And talking about quilting heroes, Liz Porter is a huge hero of mine. And so this is her quilt, Liz Porter's quilt, on the cover. And then I want you to see my name. Can you see it?
Almost, yeah.
Right there?
Yeah.
So my name is on it and Dawn Kavanaugh's name on it. I just told you she's one of my quilting heroes too. Dawn Kavanaugh's name on it. So how cool is that? I mean, it's always amazing to have a quilt on the cover. So I had the cover quilt in December, the November-December edition, but this time my name's on the cover. How cool is that? So I wanted to show you in here the two quilts, because I have two quilts in this edition of the magazine, and both of them I just love. So this one is Songbird Stars, and there, can you see it okay? And there's one shot of it. And in here, so I want to show you one block. Okay, so take a look. Can you see that border block there, Kelsey? Yeah. All right, so that's a birds in the air block, right? And I want you to think about how you would make that block. You would make it with a half square triangle, and then you would put little tiny triangles around it, and then you would reevaluate all of your life choices, right? Because it would be way too much work. So what we discovered was a way to make those 4 at a time. And essentially it's a square and a square and a square and a square cut north, south, east, west. And so we developed this method. Melanie and I duked it out. You have probably heard me talk about Melanie. Melanie's our lead quilt fairy here. And a lot of times with Melanie, I'll be like, I want to do this. And she's like, but you can't because that's a rectangle and not a square. And I'm like, but I want to do that. And then we kind of fight back and forth until we figure out the math to get it right. And so this was one of those cases where we were able to figure out how to do birds in the air 4 at a time. So if you're interested in that, that's all in the magazine this month. Crazy, interesting, lovely way to make birds in the air. And then I did see a question that came through that asked about, on the show, Sarah and I, we go through different colorways. And so in here too, it shows, can you see that, Kelsey?
I'll go up a little bit.
Up there?
Yeah.
So we walk through different colorways for this pattern. And I did see a question come through that asked what software program we're using to do that on air. And it's Electric Quilt, Electric Quilt 8. And I use it on a Mac, but you can use it on a PC too. And it's how I design everything. It's a great program, and I'm not affiliated in any way. It's a nice way to bring in, you can bring in fabrics that you actually want to use and place them, and then roll the dice and kind of figure out, do you have them in a way that makes sense to you? Because that particular quilt, actually, we had it, I had a gray in there, and the difference between the light gray and the darker gray is astounding, how just a slight change in the contrast brings that quilt to life. So let me just show you the wide shot. So there's the wide shot, Songbird Stars, and it's hanging. If you are nearby or coming through Louisville, Kentucky, all of the quilts for the show of mine are all hanging in the shop. So stop by and you'll see Songbird Stars is in there hanging. And Amy says, it says, congratulations. Thanks, Amy. Here's the other one. And so in the last season, we were talking about, Sarah and I were talking about bucket list quilts. So put in the chat, what is a quilt that you're like, that's on my bucket list. I need to make that. I haven't made it yet. I need to make it. And so, so Sarah said, I think she said a New York Beauty. I think it was a New York Beauty. It might have been a Mariner's Compass. It was something really hard. And without even thinking, I'm like, you know what mine is? It's a log cabin. Like, for some reason, I've never made a log cabin. And so I was like, so Sarah, next season you should make you should make the Mariner's Compass, and I'll make the log cabin. And Sarah was like, are you kidding me? I should have picked something way easier to say than a log cabin. So so I wanted to make a log cabin, but of course I get into it and I can't make it simple, right? I have to make it complicated. And so the log cabin that I designed is also in this month's magazine. And so there is the log cabin. You see that okay? And it is done all in flannel. And it is paper pieced, and we use the Riley Blake woolly flannels, which is such a great line. Oh, it's so luscious and beautiful, and it's very stable. It's not super stretchy, and it's absolutely gorgeous stuff to work with. And you can see there's a picture of Sarah and I on set doing the paper pieced log cabin, and these blocks are 8 by 16. And it's one of those things, like when you're designing for a magazine, like it didn't even occur to me until after I submit it that magazines aren't 16 inches wide, tall. So how are they going to put that paper piece pattern in the magazine? But thankfully they're way smarter than I am. So they just made it, you just have to get it enlarged and then put it on paper piecing paper. And we just Scotch taped the paper together and then just sewed through the Scotch tape, and it wasn't a big deal at all. But that one is in there. And yeah, Christy, I know, to frame it on the magazine cover, I know, I was thinking about that, Christy, because so I've had 3 quilts so far that made the cover. And this is the second time I've had my name on the cover. And I think I need to like frame each of those. I mean, thankfully I have a pattern in most of the magazines, but to be on the cover, come on. So I agree. I think I need to get those framed and hung up in my studio. And then the other thing I wanted to show you in this magazine, in this edition. So again, this is the January-February edition of Love of Quilting. Is from Dawn Kavanaugh, and she does an educational article each month. So this one is about how to mark on a border how to determine where your division lines are so that you can symmetrically place a border design on your quilt so that it makes sense to the math of the quilt you're facing. So if you are a hand quilter, you probably have a lot of stencils, and those stencils are the exact size that you need for whatever space that you're using. But for stand-up quilting, for long arm quilting, most of the stencils that you would use are more like registration lines. They divide the space up into equal portions, and then they give you kind of a path or direction for free motion quilting. So this article that Dawn has in here, she's showing how to place, how to mark, and how to determine how to place a feather border, like a scrolling feather border, using the math from the quilt to bring in into the border area. So lots of great stuff in here. And there was one quilt in here. Take a look. This one is from Sarah, and Shimmer and Shine. And it is paper pieced as well. Let me get the big one. It was so beautiful. So doesn't that look like winter? Doesn't that look pretty? It's just blue and white. I don't know if you've done many two-color quilts, but two-color quilts are so effective and they just look so classic all the time. So Dresden plate, Terry, I agree. Terry, have you seen the Dresden plates? Now these are Halloween themed, but the Dresden plates are little coffins, and then you quilt like little ghosts inside all the little coffins. So it's still a Dresden plate. They're just totally adorable. But I agree that a Dresden plate's on my bucket list as well. Cinco de Mayo by Karen Stone. I love Karen's work, but I don't know this quilt, Amy. I'm going to have to look it up. Karen, you know, she wins like every award out there that you can possibly win. And of course, there's always an adorable lamb sheep somewhere on it. I love seeing her techniques. She is a definite master of quilting. It's so nice to see them kind of up close. Yeah, Mariner's Compass. Yeah, that's so kind of wonderful. I have one of those on my bucket list too, as well. Vicki, Suzanne, Storm at Sea. I have done that one. I have done Storm at Sea, and the other one that I do want to do at some point is Judy Niemeyer. I have it. It's Cactus Rose, I think it is. Again, it's paper piece, and I know people have super strong opinions about paper piecing, but all those Judy Niemeyer quilts are just so striking. They're absolutely striking, especially with batik fabrics and stuff. So that one's on my list as well. The Shimmering Triangle Pineapple Quilt. I haven't done a pineapple block either, or courthouse steps. Or frankly, a regular log cabin, right? Because all I've done now is a diamond, a diamond log cabin. So, yeah, you know, it's one of the great things about quilting is that there's always something new to learn, right? There's always something fun to explore. All right, I just want to make sure I didn't miss any questions because I think I saw one. You do?
Mm-hmm.
All right. What was the question that I haven't?
In gifting a finished quilt, is wool batting an issue for folks who are allergic, or is the fabric top sufficient protection from the wool?
So in gifting a quilt, is wool batting an issue, or should you be worried about,
Or does that top layer protect?
does the top layer protect, and should you be worried about allergies? So I don't know that I would gift a wool quilt because it does need a little more special handling. So I guess, you know, like, would I give it to my teenage sons? Well, they're not teenagers anymore. No, I would not, because it requires a little more careful handling. And if you don't know if they're allergic, then I wouldn't do it at all. Because if you aren't sure, I wouldn't do it at all. As much as we would love to think that wool never beards and wool would not come through the quilt top, you just don't know that for sure. So I would not take that chance. Like I said, wool for me is beautiful stuff, but if I'm going to use it, because it's so expensive, I'm probably going to use it on something that hangs on the wall, and it's not something that's going to go on a bed anyway. But there's a lot of great wools out there that are washable wool, but you would still kind of want to be careful when you dry them and let them more air dry. So what you're gifting may have more instruction than what you would want to include in a gift. So I would maybe try a different batting, like a blend, like a cotton poly blend. But I will say, whenever you gift a quilt, always, always, always wash it first, because one, if it bleeds, I want to deal with it, right? I don't want the recipient to think they did something wrong. If it bleeds, I want that to be on me. And then secondly, the batting itself utterly changes its entire drape and feel and snuggliness with that first wash. And I want, when I give the quilt, I want it to feel snuggly. I want it to feel like you want to go, sit on the couch and wrap yourself up in it. So I always, always, always wash a quilt first before I would give it to somebody. Yeah. All right, so Kathy says, hi, Miss Angela. This is Kathy from Crows, Virginia. What are your go-to thread colors for quilting? And what weight of thread? So Kathy, in my ideal world, I would only quilt with lime green on everything, but that doesn't always work. So I would say that my most used colors would be a battleship gray, would be a white and a cream, and then we're talking about navy, and there's a green color that we sell. It's Seafoam, and it's one of those, like, you would be so surprised at how many quilts it goes on, but it's a great color. And I actually have 2 thread packs, 2 bundles on our website. So if you go to quiltedjoy.com and you look in the thread area, there are thread bundles, and I've put my favorites and my most used. There's two bundles you'll find there. So it's my favorite colors and then the most used colors that I use for my customers. So that'll give you specific links to each one. And there's another green that I use all the time, and I want to say it's mint. It's a really light green. And it just goes so well on absolutely everything. I'm not sure. It would be in those bundles. I'm not sure that I remember. Pale mist. That sounds right. That sounds right. And then Kathy also says, so weight of thread, Kathy. So generally I'm going to use a 40 weight or a 50 weight thread. Again, if I have not so much confidence in what I'm stitching, I'm going to go with a skinny thread so that it blends and kind of melts away. If I'm feeling a little more bold, I'm going to go with a bigger thread. But generally it's going to be a 40 weight or a 50 weight thread. I'm really loving Primo Soft. So Primo Soft is Glide's sister thread. It's got a matte finish and it's a 50 weight. It is a little lintier. But it's a good alternative to Sofine. If you're looking for an alternative to Sofine, it's a direct competitor. Some of it will glow under black light as well that you wouldn't expect. So, and it's a 50 weight matte finished. And then Kathy also asked, do I baste the whole quilt before quilting or baste as you go? So Kathy, if you're talking about a sit down machine quilting on a domestic machine, yes, I would baste the whole thing. And then get started. If you're talking about long arm quilting, I only quilt what I can see between my bars. So I would baste what I can reach between my bars, I would quilt what I can see between my bars, then I'd roll it forward. And I'd baste and I'd baste and I'd quilt what I can see between my bars, then I'd roll it forward. I would not baste the whole thing and then roll it back. Now, that's the way I work. I know that there are folks who do it a different way, but for me, I need to have control of all 3 layers. And so if you think about, like, if you were to roll a magazine up and how it splays out, that's the same thing that happens on a long arm machine. And so if I'm going to baste it, I need to baste the heck out of it, because as I roll it up, because those 3 layers aren't completely attached, there's going to be some splaying that happens. So that's why I don't baste the whole shebang and then go back to the top and start again. I only quilt what I can see between my bars, baste what I can see between my bars, deal with it, roll it forward, and do the next chunk that I can reach between my bars. All right, Kathy, hopefully that was that was clear. Deb says she finished all that she took in, and now she's doing one for her son-in-law's birthday in early January. Awesome. Deb, when you get it done, you'll have to put it in the clubhouse so we can see it and celebrate with you. A modern wedding ring quilt. Yeah, Vani, have you seen the ones? It's by So Kind of Wonderful. I wonder if that's the one you're talking about, Vani, for a modern wedding ring quilt. I've forgotten what the name of it. If you know what the name of the one I'm thinking of that's So Kind of Wonderful, pop it there in the chat. But it's a really beautiful take on a wedding ring. I don't know if you guys saw, this was when I got engaged a couple years back. In order to announce the engagement, I borrowed Melanie's wedding ring quilt, and we went down by the Ohio River and put the quilt around my husband and I, fiance at the time, and then posted it on social media. And it just said, does this quilt make me look engaged? And so it kind of blew up. Everybody, noticed the double wedding ring, and all the quilters at least knew exactly what was going on right away. So super sweet. Judy, what's the best way to wash a quilt? So Judy, I just throw it in the washing machine and then throw it in the dryer, not to get all the way dry, just to get most of the way dry, and then kind of get it out and let it air dry after that. I'm not super fussy with most of my quilts. The ones that are wall hangings, the ones that I do have to be fussy with, I probably won't wash them on a regular basis. I'll probably just put them in the dryer to kind of knock the dust off of them occasionally. One of the things that I am trying to get to in my home is the ability to swap out quilts with the season. And so I use a Hang It Dang It. I don't know if you've seen the Hang It Dang It. We have them on the website. But the Hang It Dang It is just a pole that you can extend and make shorter or longer, and then it hangs from a central point. And so it makes it super easy to swap out different size quilts because you're just using that central point to hang things from. And so one of the things that I'd like to get to is to be able to move the quilts through with the seasons. I do have a quilt, a glass case. It wasn't made for quilts. I don't know what it was made for. Yeah, I have no idea. But anyway, it's all glass from like counter height up. And so I have quilts folded in there so that it just looks like color and pattern behind the glass. And of course that keeps the dust off of it too. I'm of the opinion that I want you, when I give a quilt, I want it to be used. I want it to be used to the point that it's worn out and loved, to the point where they call me or I notice that there's a hole in it. Like I want it to be loved and used all that much. Like the way to insult the gift for me, the way to insult me would be to say, I'm going to go put this in the drawer, or I'm going to go put this in the closet and not use it because I thank you so much. I'm going to go store it over here so I don't hurt it. Well, that's not why I gave it to you. I gave it to you so that, the dog could sit on it and you could drag it around and your kiddo could make a fort out of it. Like, use it. That's what I want. I want you to use it and love it until it's in rags. Like that would be the greatest compliment to me, is to see it used and loved to that degree. And what do you guys think? Do you agree, or are you more of a, no, I've spent a lot of time and effort and I want it to be, properly cared for? I haven't really thought about that. I guess people have different opinions. I suppose it also depends, like if we're talking about like a Judy Niemeyer or something like that, then yeah, that's the kind of quilt that I would consider who I'm going to give it to. I probably would keep it for myself, but that kind of quilt with all that batiks in it and all that time and effort, I might keep that as to give to someone who's willing to put a little more effort into caring for it. Hopefully that helps. Where do I find today's worksheet to download? So today's worksheet, I think you're talking about some of our grid designs. And so little birdie told me that on Friday, when we send out our newsletter on Friday, it's going to have a worksheet in it for the gnome. We did a floral grids for our December edition of the Quilted Joy Clubhouse. And so in this Friday's newsletter will be a downloadable worksheet for that grid, but it'll also have a link in there where you can go grab all of the grids from all of 2021. So do that because come 2022, those will be changed. So if you want those grids, get them now. And the way you get them is you join our newsletter list. So if you aren't on our newsletter list, it's super easy to join. If you go to quiltedjoy.com, up at the very top, it says join the club. Click on that and you'll be able to sign up for the newsletter. And then on Friday, check your inbox, because we typically send it out like at 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday. And it'll probably be in your promotions tab when you look at your tabs on your inbox. But in there will be a link to the worksheet and then all of the other worksheets from the whole year. So print all those out and start to play. There's also empty grids, so you can use those to practice with and print those out to practice with. And hopefully you've been playing a lot with those grids. They're quite powerful. Metro rings. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, Metro rings. So kind of wonderful. That's really beautiful. If you haven't seen that pattern, go check it out. It's quite pretty. I always want people to use quilts. I gift to them. I will always be making more. Isn't that the truth, Michelle? Isn't that the truth? All right, Denise says, I just purchased a Millie, seeing all the beautiful quilts. I'm now wondering what I'm doing. Oh, don't let your brain do that, Denise. You are worthy and you are going to make beautiful things. Don't compare yourself to others. That's that perfection monster that lives in our head. You need to pat him on the head and tell him to go sit in the corner for a while. Don't let him boss you around. You boss him around. I work outside the home 70 to 80 hours per week, and I'm really wanting to have some sort of knowledge before I retire in 3 years. Where do I start? Help me, please. Okay, so if you are working 70 to 80 hours a week, Denise, you are probably in some boring meetings. So in some of those boring meetings, you can doodle. You can doodle and you can start to learn designs, because until you can draw it, you won't be able to stitch it. So anytime that you are in at the boring soccer game or at the dentist office, just have a sketch pad with you and work on a design so that you know the path. You have the brain muscle connection for that path, and you'll be ready to take it to the machine. But I would just say, I personally feel better if I put in 1 stitch a day, even like not even 2, just if all I can do is 1 stitch, I feel better. So if I can't put in any stitches, then I'm drawing or doodling to make myself feel better. So don't think that if you're not in front of a machine, you can't practice. You still can. Just do it with pencil and paper, or pen and paper. Missy, when will the new season, the 3900 series of Fawn Porter Love of Quilting, be shown on PBS? So Missy, here's the thing. It airs all over the country. Different markets premiere it at different times of the year. So I don't know where you are, but like in Iowa, I think it premieres in January. And in Kentucky, I don't think it premieres until late February. So check, because every state is different. And if you are somewhere where you don't get the Love of Quilting show, start a little like phone tree write-in campaign with your guild, because they are given that show for free. Your PBS station does not pay to get that show. And so they just don't know that you want it. And if enough people call it, now they might put it on at 4 in the morning, but if enough people write in or call in and say, we want the show, then they will do it. So start a little campaign with your guild, because it doesn't cost your PBS station anything to pick it up. Amy says, we'll be moving a Lenny to a new home. What's the best way to disassemble and move? Amy, take lots of pictures, lots and lots of pictures. Get some painter's tape so that when you take like a bolt out or take something out, you can painter's tape it back into the hole so that you're not guessing what bolt goes in which hole. And then get some pool noodles and cut them down the equator on one side. Don't cut them totally open, just make them down one side so you can kind of open up the pool noodle and put that pool noodle over your rails, because that will help protect the rails, especially if you have an APQS system and you have Bliss. That'll help protect the Bliss. And then get some saran wrap, some really good quality saran wrap, not the saran wrap that I have in my pantry right now that doesn't stick to anything. Really good quality saran wrap, and like that cling sticky wrap, and go around the canvas on your bars, and it'll just keep debris and dirt and everything off of the canvas as you move it. But loads of photos and painter's tape, a pool noodle, and some really good cling wrap will help you. And then don't forget, if you have whatever manufacturer machine you have an APQS machine. If you get stuck, just call the company and they'll work you through. They'll get you up and running. No worries. Don't worry about it too much. It'll be fine. Let's see, any other questions that came through? Let me check Facebook. Quilts are made to be loved. Yep, use it up. I agree. Oh, good. And we did over in Facebook, we've got links to those colors and those cones that I was talking about before. Use it all now. Quilts, china, and crystal. I agree, Melissa. Actually, my aunt and uncle recently told me that they've got all of my grandmother's china, and that I just need to go and fetch it. And so I'm going to go over and grab it. I don't even remember what it looked like from my grandmother Margaret, but I'm going to go check it out. With that big Thanksgiving dinner that we had 19 people come in. We ran out of plates, so we had a whole mishmash of plates. So it'd be nice to get enough plates to have a big group of people there. All right, so Karen Bell, she says, what's the software you use for this is how I would quilt this. Love your innovative way of quilting, and thanks for sharing your talent and knowledge. And Karen, that was that Electric Quilt 8 software. Oh, GIMP. Oh, thank you, Kelsey. Okay, so Karen, you're talking about during the clubhouse when I draw on a photo. There's a number of different ones out there. You likely have one on your computer right now, whatever paint program you already have on your computer. You could bring your photo in and then draw on that. But the one that I use on our clubhouse is GIMP, G-I-M-P, and it's a free open source program, and it's easy if you get stuck to Google a question and you'll find an answer. And I use like maybe 0.1% of what it's capable of. All I want to be able to do is bring in a photo, draw on the photo, hide that layer, bring in another layer, draw on the photo, hide that layer, and then turn layers on and off. And so that's what I use GIMP for, G-I-M-P. It's both Mac and PC. It's actually an open source program, so it's really good. So are you guys going anywhere for Christmas? Are you doing anything special? Is everybody ready for Christmas? I will say that this year what we decided to do was we're going to take the kids to Disney World in February. And so their Christmas is going to be Disney World. And I think we're going to have to take some Kleenexes with us because my husband's a humongous Star Wars fan. And so I think we'll just stand in front of the Millennium Falcon there for a while and let him have a moment. But my understanding is you have to like do all of this preparation. Like I can't just show up and give Mickey Mouse my money and walk in the door. Like I have to like game the system somehow, and I'm so utterly clueless. So I have to figure all that out so that we can actually like, I think you have to like make reservations to eat places, and it might be too late to do that. And then there's all these like special ways to get further in line. Yeah, I feel like I need to have a whole Disney education in order to just take my kids to Disney. But that's that, and they know it's coming. I'm not like, telling you guys a secret that they don't know. They know that Santa's bringing them Disney World. Deb says, does APQS make LED lights for vintage 2003 Millie? No, it does not, Deb. It doesn't have the wiring that you would need for that, unfortunately. Catherine, can you use Magna bobbins and an M bobbin with a back spring? So Catherine, if you're using MagnaGlide bobbins, you need to take that anti-backlash spring out because the magnet needs metal to click onto, and the spring, there's too much movement. It can't hold on to that spring. So pop that out, and then your MagnaGlides will work in that bobbin case. For me, I have a separate bobbin case that I use just for my MagnaGlide so that I don't have to fiddle with that spring, because it's a fiddly beast. So I don't want to mess with it, every day. So I just have a separate case I use just for my MagnaGlides. All right, did any other questions come through that I missed?
Terry had a question about Quilt Glide. When she practices using Quilt Glide, she gets knots and broken threads.
Yes, so Terry has a question about Quilt Glide, and as I mentioned, Quilt Glide is, other manufacturers would call it Coast or Cruise, and Terry's saying that when she uses it, she gets thread breaks and bird's nests. So Terry, what's happening is, you're in manual mode, basically. When you're going slow, Quilt Glide switches you automatically off of stitch regulation mode and into manual mode. Okay, so let's think about how manual mode works. Your needle just fires. It doesn't change, it just fires. And so if you are going slowly, you can enter the same hole and pierce yourself, pierce your own thread, cut your own thread with the needle, because you're re-entering the same hole. So you can, I would recommend that you go maybe a little faster with the Quilt Glide, because it sounds like you're going so slow that you're just re-entering the same hole. And that's why you're getting those knots, those little French knots on the backside too, because you're just going so slow that you're kind of fighting yourself. If you find that you need to go slower than what, Quilt Glide if you're wanting to go slower and that is causing you to break threads and have those little French knots on the back, consider going into actual manual mode. So turn off your stitch regulator, turn down your needle speed, turn it way down, like maybe a 7 or an 8. And then you can go with the little tiny length or speed, and it won't break your thread. So I think that what you're doing is you're kind of fighting yourself and you're piercing your own thread with your needle. All right, any other questions? All right, you guys, I hope that you have a lovely, beautiful, what is the spring? Oh wait, there were some other questions here. What is the spring and what does it look like? Melissa, it's in the bottom of your bobbin case. It looks like, okay, Melissa, remember way back when we all had records and record players? And if you wanted to use a, now I just lost, a 45, because the 45s had the bigger hole than the LPs. They had the little hole, and so you had to get an adapter. You had to get a little plastic adapter that popped into the hole of a 45 so you could play that 45 on your big record player. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. That's what it looks like. It looks like that adapter, only it's silver instead of like white or yellow the way they used to come. So look in there. If there's anything in the bottom of that bobbin case that looks different, that doesn't look like just a sheet of metal, that's the spring that we're talking about. If it's available, get the dining package. Oh, at Disney? Okay, I'll look and see. I have no idea. I'm told that I may have waited too long. Like, I don't know what happens if you don't have reservations. I mean, they'll sell me a pretzel, right? I'll get a Mickey Mouse pretzel at least, I hope. So, all right, Terry, Merry Christmas. It's always so nice to see you guys, so nice to spend time with you guys. I hope that you all enjoyed, and I hope that you have a very Merry Christmas and a happy holiday and a Happy New Year. And don't forget to sign up for that newsletter so you get all the worksheets, and we will see you in January. All right, you guys, bye. See you later. Bye.